Ah, yes, making a video outside means the cat's bugging me. Mostly. So anyway, kind of on a general subject of a couple of things. Um, there's different videos, which is what I mean. Responding kind of vaguely. Some guy, blue shades, something or other, made some video about the machine nature that I've talked about. It's a machine making machines. And cats are cats, people are people. Our programming is pretty obvious in the generic sense. Yeah, we are individuals, and that individual diversity is, you know, horribly significant in terms of, the range of our behavior is so extensive in terms of we can be such individual little snowflakes. That the snow can be very different depending on what kind of flakes we are in society. What kind of society we construct. Come on, cat. So you stay over here. Let me go sit somewhere and relax, huh? Yeah, go sit in the shade. Yes. Hopefully I got rid of him. No, he's still following me. There's a problem you can't do much about. He'll figure out that I'm going to ignore him. I'll walk around, and that way he won't be quite as bothersome. He'll get tired. Flowers, you can look at. All machines, they really do have a very specific agenda, and because of, as we acquire more and more genes, more and more DNA material to work with, the range of diversity in the basic structure is increased. And that's, the point is this is not a complex thing in the sense of how the machine basically works. The basic wheels, steering wheel thing is basically what a car is. And yeah, you can have lots of different manifestations of car. That doesn't, nothing should be implied from that complexity, should not imply or be used as an excuse to say there's something complex about the overall thing, the system. The system isn't complex. Our design is so crude. Part of this is, I did another little bit for the video site, whatever you want to call it, the logic site. Simplifying the logical argument into a progression of steps. And it's this argument about the existence of God, and I just thought of another reason to be suspect of the existence of this God, was this idea that why didn't he give us an ability to have pleasure with each other without the risk of reproduction? We can figure it out, but obviously these little beasties can't figure that out. They can't, figure out, well, just have a blowjob instead. They can't manipulate their function for the simpler purpose. Animals, generally speaking, don't figure out how to masturbate unless they're in confinement or some environment where they're taught, essentially. That's kind of a cruelty of this God. First, that he wouldn't just say, okay, I want you to reproduce, just press the reproduce button on you and you'll reproduce, which would be a simpler mechanism. Why complicate it with a bunch of I love you stuff that doesn't necessarily have much to do with anything admirable. We don't love like in some kind of dignified way often. We often love in a very crude way, big hooters. That's, again, not something you admire. It's not something your intelligence says, wow, that's a really thought out plan. Alright, so the other thing that got me thinking about this was old fans contest. Damn, went out. Well, that's good because I get to save a little bit for later. I was watching some of the entries, and some of them, attempt to try to articulate this idea of the magnitude of the machine and the suffering going on in this natural biosphere and all that kind of stuff. And it's very hard to explain. And then many people also, like the Blue Shades guy, he did say something like, almost implying that deep feeling or feelings, meaningful feelings, are a complex function. And only big-brained animals like whales and humans do this, and I don't think there's a logical reason to believe that's the way it works. I think that's convenient for humans. I think it's intuitive for humans in the sense that that's how we experience our lives. As our complex thoughts create a lot of our feelings, and so we think that it's a complex mechanism. But the feeling part isn't complex. The desire, the angst, the reversion, aversion, the suffering is a crude, old mechanism that these two bugs, I think that's a little assassin bug. Yeah, it is, a baby assassin bug. I mean, damn, that would be good for the macro contest. Well, maybe he'll stay. Maybe they don't fly too good when they're young. I don't think I ever saw one that size before, that small. So, hey, firsts and such. You see, this is, I can't really explain this. I mean, this color probably doesn't come out in the video, but it's just such an interesting color for a flower. And then there's sunflowers, but they don't do the typical sunflower thing. These are Mexican. They're a little bit retarded. But anyway, now there really is an interesting plant. I will utilize in the future more and more, I think, just because it's big and bold and aggressive, and unfortunately the deers do find it a bit tasty. So that's a problem. Alright, so where was I? So there's no way to, you try to describe it, people just think about all the rodents every day, coming to these harsh endings, tortured by cats and diseases and, all the squirming and angst, all the stuff that, the diseases that makes them crazy first, they die of insanity, just really nasty stuff going on. And to turn that into some sort of glib response by a human, which is, they don't know nothing. What are you doing, you stupid fucks? Stupid cat. Stop it! Santino! What are you doing? Huh? Hey! Yeah, he outsmarted you. He's on the car. Quit being an asshole. Stop being an asshole. Stop being an asshole. It's hard for them to know. See, that's the advantage we have. We can know. We can know. We can watch ourselves. That's what we do. We watch ourselves. That's essentially what consciousness is. We watch ourselves being an asshole. So anyway, so that also relates, it's always, all this stuff is connected. So I was just thinking about that just raised the thought that, there's this simple argument I'm making about how your brain works, and I wanted to qualify it a little bit, add a little extra. The idea that you have these two brains. You have the brain that reacts to the world, creating a feeling, and then you essentially think about your feelings and attempt to resolve them. So the problem exists in the world. Your brain feels the problem, makes it into a feeling of sadness or fear or something, and then you deal with your response to the feeling. In a sense, your brain tries to resolve the feeling for you, either with internal mush, rationalizations. Oh, it's only a Chinese kid getting run over. Oh, there are black people, who cares? Some kind of bullshitism that's used to negate the existence of the problem. Or, if the feeling lingers, oh, that's horrible, and it just stays kind of horrible. There's a new disease that's spread airborne, and it's as bad as AIDS. Yeah, you're just not going to be able to rationalize your way out of that one with some kind of little mind trick. You're going to have to say, oh shit, I'm going to have to wear a gas mask and got to do something to, I don't want to get this disease. So you have to respond to your angst because you have angst about the circumstance. It's not a circumstance that you can not be distracted by, not be cognizant of. And so you got to fix it. And that's what your brain does. It schemes a fix. Now the one part, the scheming for the fix, you sort of get to do that in a conscious way. You see ideas float up and then your brain rejects them and it plays with them. And so you get to consciously do that because it's a slower process. It's more deliberate. There's time to think of a solution. But the reaction is, generally speaking, a subconscious thing. It happens very quickly. Butterfly, butterfly. Oh, I want to stroke it. I want to stroke it. Butterfly, stroke, 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 stroking the butt. Oh. Yeah, so that happens subconsciously, and you don't even think about your reaction. You just react. Butterfly, react. That's, I'm using some satirical exaggeration. So it's a subconscious reaction that mostly manifests your feelings. They seep on you emotionally through your hormones, lots of different ways. You get a sense of boredom or a sense of tedium, or these things, these feeling problem, and but you don't like consciously get depressed or consciously get worried. It just kind of subconsciously falls on you, where the process of thinking of a solution is, you're not involved. I mean, your brain is still doing it. There's no you doing it, but you're seeing it. You're watching it happen, where your brain is testing ideas. And we do that consciously. So, subtle distinction, but I just thought I would make it. So, the original plan was I would sit here and having a cigarette and be nice, and just didn't quite work out. It's a little bit of a breeze too, which is, at least there is at this moment. But it is really just fantastically lovely here. I'm a very fortunate person in lots of respects. Very unfortunate in lots of other respects. So it's unfortunately we all pick a lot of cards in life, and in the end, you're going to end up with, we'll have a different set of jokers and aces. We'll ace different things. We'll get the joker on different things. But in the end, there's a lot of similarity in the liabilities. If you live to be a ripe old age, then you have all the miseries of the ripe old age. I mean, it's nothing like the Anacontavad silver lining kind of bullshit, or negate it all into meaningless. But certainly there's fundamentally worse circumstances than other circumstances, and there's certainly right and wrong in the world. But yeah, we do. The law of averages will make a perfect life pretty much impossible. I guess that's the safest thing to say. That's going to be hard to obtain. There'll be some goofball. There'll be some 8-ball in the rack eventually. Anyway, so that gets back to the mechanistic nature of it, the fact that this isn't we're doing this in a very nuanced way individually, but what we're doing is not nuanced. The fundamental function, and it's just a machine creating machines. I mean, the machine of evolution, the machine of what the implications of natural selection. And the thing that's annoying is that so this is also related to the video I still haven't finished watching, which is the um, Carrie McCarpet interview with the Wright guy, Tim Wright or something. And it's just so loony. I mean, I stopped at this point where he's talking about the swollen sex glands of the plants. That we're eating the swollen sex glands of the plants. And they're saying all this with a straight face. They're having a conversation about eating swollen sex glands, and you're just, I mean, vegetarian porn or something. It's just so bad. Just ludicrously bad philosophy. So mushy. But yeah, it's just parasitism, and the fact that parasitism grows into interdependence is no big surprise. It's not magical at all. And the truth is, this system is incredibly brutal in that it just, nature could make it so you would feel pain for like 10 days after you died. I mean, your brain wouldn't die automatically or something, and that you would just suffer for 10 days. Nature has no mechanism to regulate how brutally horrible the suffering is. There's just nothing to stop it from being. It could be very, very bad. And back to the blue shades guy, the argument is that that's a simple mechanism in terms of the mechanisms of a brain, of the complex mechanisms of the brain. One of the most rudimentary ones is this idea of feeling. It's fundamental to any intelligent development, so it has to be a primitive function. It's not a function that arrived with big brain mammals. It's a function that existed way back, and the basic nature of this negative to the whip, the mechanism to a way of instituting incentivized behavior. It's an old mechanism, and there's no regulator anywhere in the system to say how much torture is okay. And we watch animals walk it off, so to speak, and people just think, it's because they don't feel anything. No, it's because they can't afford otherwise. As an evolutionary mechanism, they don't have the ability to lie down and wait for somebody to bring them some soup. They have to eke out an existence no matter what happens to them. So they have to walk it off. They don't have a choice in acquiescing to their discomfort. They have to eat their discomfort if they're going to eat. That it's just a matter of their priorities. And you see that when they're really desperate, they do lie down, they do hide. And it's a big risk in terms of their survivability to do that. But that's just how bad it is. Just evidence that what they're experiencing is disabling and horrible, and just because they don't express it the same way we do, and they're not as expressive as we are because it has been conducive to because we're a social animal. It's been a social animal that for some period of time has had the capacity to understand the other animals, what they want, in a more complex way. We're able to give people the sense that we're in distress. You can see that in the primates. And so there's commensurate reactions to those actions, like crying and despondency, and these trigger reactions in the other beasties to say, oh, maybe I ought to quit beating the shit out of him because he's, kind of given up and is defeated, kind of thing. And in this kind of empathy or whatever, sympathy, takes over, and the behavior changes. but it's all behavior based on these mechanisms. And I suppose the more interesting subject, although I think this one's just too fundamental in terms of appreciating the, I don't know why this one's dying. It's dying. It's pink, so it's okay. It is in a pot with a lot of stuff. That's probably why it's dying, is because it's in a pot with a lot of stuff. Yeah, I think I just cut it. I mean, birds picked up the pieces anyway. I mean, the birds are, they knock that one over. I mean, it is kind of irritating. They do take their toll on the aesthetics. I'm just disappointed my petunias really aren't doing very well. They're all kind of straggly. But anyway, it's every year or something. I mean, some of the straggliness looks good on those. I mean, it's kind of nice that they're all fucked up. But I would like them to have a little more flowers. I would like that matters. So where was I? Yeah, so that's an important subject, is the basic horror. We've got to stay focused on the fact that we don't appreciate how deep the torment goes. We can't really feel the biosphere's pain. We can't in any rational way comprehend the depth of it. And that should give us pause for sure. But yeah, the other argument that's interesting is the whole argument about how we can even disagree on interpretation of these facts. So here we are, machines, rather robotic in our function, and yet we are programmed so fundamentally different by our life experience. And that's pretty much all that does it, right? There's a genetic component, but it's not really genetics that makes you something, a scientist or a ditch digger or all the things that you could possibly be. The thing that's more likely to decide it is whether your family was rich or your family was poor, whether you grew up in a civilized country or an uncivilized country. I mean, the brains over in Islam that are right now ISISing and doing all this silly blah, 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 they could be just as rational as me, if not for their silly upbringing, if not for their parents being lunatics, and they just spread the disease. Unlike a physical disease, they spread the mental disease of fanaticism, closed-mindedness, rigidity, racist kind of bigoted philosophy, a philosophy of this is the one and only truth, and if you violate it, you're going to hell, and therefore nobody can violate it because that's the rules. It's all catch-22 philosophy. Again, why would your God not give us orgasms for doing unto others as we'd have others do unto us? Why isn't charity an orgasmic event? Empathy. Why is it just this reproduction thing? That sounds like a machine. That sounds, incentivizing something as crude as that. And for an organism that can already know what reproduction is and what causes it, so why bother having to incentivize it at all? Shouldn't reproduction be something thoughtfully done, not something done because you have a physical excitement, that your physical hunger, and that you're trying to satisfy, that has nothing to do with any intent to make a baby? That's a God worth praying to, a God who incentivizes something unrelated to the consequence. I mean, that sounds like somebody designing the game Catch-22. It doesn't sound like somebody doing something rational or reasonable or fair or decent or anything good. So yeah, these are a nice flower. They're just so weak. They should be big, and I just don't know. But maybe it'll get better. maybe it's just that it got too hot, you know, and it was dry for so long. Maybe that was part of it. So maybe as the weather becomes more balanced in terms of the extremes, it will improve the planterage. Okay, anyway, this video is going on a bit. But these are like the two fundamental subjects, is the crude nature of the function, the mechanism that made us, the crude forces that did that, and then what we do about it, which is a question about how do we acquire, as robots, as machines, this better programming, and how do we institute it in some way. And the force we're fighting against is that we're still conditioned animals, that are the subjective personal experience stuff. The coding you get, the maturation you endure, is going to decide things like your sexual preference and food taste and lots of things. And it also decides, in a sense, a certain level of comfort with certain philosophical or ideological ideas, and it just bigots you to a narrative, a fable, a story, and we're not picking our story as clean, thinking, capable machines. We're not doing, strictly speaking, logic in defining ourselves, because the rules of the game don't really allow you to do that perfectly. But you can certainly do it better once you have that as an understanding. Once you understand how you're programmed, then you can, the machine is capable of deprogramming or creating filters against the misinformation, the nonsensical bigotries, the nepotisms, all the things that, all the basic mechanisms that again, you can tie to the natural function, and you can realize that to maximize the potential of these thinking machines, you can't let the natural function destroy it, because it really will. Because the agenda of nature is consumption, reproduction. It will have you cannibalizing. Well, we're using addiction and then parasitism. So it will addict you psychologically. It'll create a feeling reaction that isn't fair and balanced. You will react more when it's your child. You will react more when it's somebody of your race. You will react more when you don't have when you have rationalizations, or when you have these subjective butterfly, pretty, Gila monster, ugly, you know, same markings almost. Well, not really, but, well marked. Oh, let's go see if my assassin bug is still where I left him. I think it was over here. Oh yes, he's still there. Good. Yeah, so I can get the macro camera. I'll have to remember that. Get a picture of Junior. Haven't seen too many praying mantises. I mean, I saw one about I don't know, 2 weeks ago. It's about that size. But yeah, there just ain't much around. It's kind of funny because there's not too many butterflies, so yeah, it'd be thin pickings for the poor mantises anyway, because the number of flying insects is quite low. And I've barely even seen the hummingbird 3 times maybe. I mean, it used to make, you know, the usual tradition is daily visits, so it seems like the old hummingbirds that used to be here croaked. And so gotta wait till some new ones find this to be a bountiful area for doing their consumption and such. So, but lots of hawk moths this year. See one of those almost every time I do this fiddly-faddly walking around thing. So anyway, I think that's all. It's enough anyway. It'll do. And yeah, it is a weird year. So these hibiscuses they should have flowered by now, but they just grew so big. But you know they're budding anyway. They just dragonfly. They just haven't gotten to it yet. So any day now. But yeah, they're like a week or more late, something like that, maybe 2. Anyway, which is strange because it was such a, well, it was a very cold spring and it was a very hot, not spring, something like that. So anyway, until the next time and such, if this video recorded even, it's a little longer than I thought.